a more ambitious set of goals in terms of reaching sustainable development. It's aimed at both developing and developed countries, which is a difference from the MDGs. And it's also transformational. It's aimed at balancing the 5 Ps of fundamental sustainable development, namely people, prosperity, planet, peace, and partnerships. A very big emphasis on it not being done alone. It's going to take all of us to be able to achieve the sustainable development goals. The agenda is driven by the principle of leaving no one behind, starting with reaching those that are left furthest behind first. So especially those in the rural areas here in the Gambia, and we are trying to bridge the rural-urban divide. It is rooted in universal human rights, principles, and standards. And the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs are aligned with the Gambia's National Development Plan that has recently been finalized, the 2018 to 2021 National Development Plan, which has the objective of creating a more resilient Gambia, where people are safe from chronic threats such as abject poverty, hunger, disease, violence, while also ensuring that protection is ensured from sudden and hurtful disruptions in daily life. In the SDGs, there are 169 targets and 230 indicators that cover all the spectrums of sustainable development, like I said earlier. ICT, it features heavily within the SDGs, especially in Goal 8, which calls for decent work for all and sustainable economic growth. And also in Goal 9, which highlights infrastructure, industrialization, and innovation. And also Goal 17, which is strengthening the partnership for development. Target 8.2 in the SDGs calls on higher levels of economic activity through diversification, technological upgrading, and innovation, which you can't have without ICT or the internet. And that includes a focus on high-level, value-added, and labor-intensive sectors. Goal 9 has ICT subsumed within all of its targets, but it specifically states that increasing access to information and information communications technology and striving to provide universal and affordable access to the internet in the least developing countries, of which the Gambia is one, by 2020. So, and then also in Goal 17, there's a target to fully operationalize the technology bank and science, technology, and innovation through capacity building for LDCs to enhance the use of enabling technology, in particular, information and communications technology. So you can see it's subsumed within all of the goals of the SDGs. And to be honest, you cannot achieve the SDGs without strength and focus on ICT. The importance of internet use is everywhere as a means of reducing poverty, to improving health systems, to improving food security, education, access to clean water and energy, reducing inequality, especially amongst women and youth, job creation, environmental responsibility, and maintaining peace. The SDGs, they're as interconnected as they are vast. So there are areas of focus within the SDGs that are game changers. This means that they have the potential to deliver gains across multiple areas of sustainable development. ICT is one of these game changers. ICT breeds innovation, allowing a country like the Gambia to develop solutions to challenges that work in its own country context. Local solutions to local problems. Biometric IDs, mobile money, and things of that nature. Innovation is not necessarily dependent on ICT, but when the two go together, the impact is more powerful because of the computing, the connecting, the visualizing, and the problem-solving capacity of ICT. Not only for planners and decision makers like us, but also for ordinary citizens that can also drive innovation through crowdsourcing, through collaboration, through having a voice, through accountability. The National Development Plan also highlights the significance of ICT in the Gambia to realize the Gambia's national development aspirations. One of the critical enablers of the plan is making the Gambia a digital nation and creating a modern information society, which is a complement to the 8 strategic priorities of the NDP. I had recently been to Rwanda, and in Rwanda, they have a strategic policy unit in the office of the president. And in this SPU, they have, it's a digital dashboard, let me say. And this digital dashboard monitors the progress that they're making towards their national development plan and also the progress that they're making towards the SDGs. So these are the things to show you how ICT is needed to strengthen development aspirations and also for monitoring progress. We talk a little bit about internet governance. What do we mean when we're talking about internet governance? Internet governance is the development and application by government, private sector, and civil society in their respective roles of shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape and the evolution and the use of the internet. As you can see, it is inclusive. It's not just for government alone, but it involves all of us. The digital divide, that has to be transformed into social inclusion for development, and that can only happen through internet use. Internet governance can be used to create a pro-development tool and the inclusive environment to enable internet use to be an engine for sustainable development. Internet use is essential in our daily lives, changing the way we learn, access information, communicate, and do business. Key to the achievement of the SDGs is raising awareness and advocacy, especially at the regional and local level. ICT has a large role to play in this regard, getting information on the SDGs to the people and letting them know what it means to them. Internet governance helps to harness policies aimed at facilitating internet infrastructural development, enhancing usability, empowering people with low income, and creating the environment for development. Information sharing and accessing to underserved communities. So it's important that these policies that come from the ministry are tailored to local needs and specifics. The internet can also serve as a multi-stakeholder platform for achieving the SDGs, for monitoring progress of the goals, sharing knowledge and information, capacity building, sharing best practices and lessons learned, not only within the country, but also around the world. Internet governance has the capacity to establish mechanisms to address issues that are harmful to development and society, such as corruption, violent extremism, irregular migration, environmental degradation, disease, and crime. So there's a strong linkage between the two, and I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jan. Thank you. Mr. Jani mentioned 2 things, which is leaving no one behind when it comes to the SDGs, because that's one of the main goals. And then we are talking about internet governance, which is a multi-stakeholder approach, and the youths are one of the biggest stakeholders when it comes to how the internet is governed, because if you know, in the Gambia, we have 60% of population being young people, and one of the main complaints they have, especially against this government, is they are being left behind. And when we talk about the National Development Plan, we are talking about the SDGs being infused into them. So we can hear from LAMIN DARBOE. He can tell us what roles can the young people play when it comes to achieving the SDGs and the internet governance being part of it. Mr. DARBOE.
Very much, Madam. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just picking it from where Mr. Jane just stopped, we were just talking about energy, talking to peers. Of course, you will all agree with me that at the birth of the new Gambia, there has been a lot of tensions around energy. And I was only calling on UNDP and other partners to give more money to Ministry of Energy, to PS Energy, so that he can definitely help us sort out the energy problem. Because if that is not provided, we may occupy Westfield and we may also say DEFA-DOE. And you know, we all know what that means. And PS is saying he agrees entirely. He's going to do all his best, and we are not going to say, say DEFA-DOE anymore, and we are not going to occupy Westfield. On a more serious note, the topic we're looking at today, which is looking at the SDGs and internet governance, has a lot to do with young people. For example, in the Gambia and even in Africa, we will say over 60% of the population are under 35. These are the active internet users. We are told that, for example, in the Gambia, we almost skip the digital age directly into the mobile revolution. So as a result, we kind of, most of us are into the mobile technology, using the mobile, but still have some limited understanding of most of the things that have to do with the digital economy or the industry. And young people who are the major consumers are victims of different issues that happen online and even translating offline. So when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goal, we are looking at development goals that will transform our society, that will provide deliver services for our young people. I don't need to go into all the goals, but Mr. Jane has already gave us a synopsis of what the Sustainable Development Goals are. But fundamentally, the role of young people in attaining the Sustainable Development Goal will go for the 3 A's. And that means, one, as young people, we have a responsibility to ensure there is awareness around the Sustainable Development Goals. Because that is one of the principles that we all agreed that these are the 17 goals to deliver and transform our societies and the world, but we will all recommit ourselves to raise awareness to make people understand so that governments can align their development plans, there could be alignment at regional level, but even our individual actions at communities will also be aligned to this international development framework. But as young people, aside raising awareness, we also need to ensure accountability. There are duty bearers who need to deliver service. Governments and international development partners, or even local governments. It's our role to ensure that we hold them to account to deliver service. Service that are supposed to ensure that the promise of the SDGs, that our lives will be transformed, that we will have jobs, that poverty and hunger will be reduced, and health education will be delivered in better quality and relevance, are done as promised. In addition to holding the duty bearers to account, we have a role to take action ourselves. So we say we need to raise awareness. There's awareness, accountability, and action. And action means individually or collectively, we have a responsibility to execute, to implement ourselves the Sustainable Development Goals. It may be the youth-led, peer-led, or in a group, or contribute towards the existing programs that are being sanctioned by government or other partners so that young people we do not only become beneficiaries to these projects, to these programs, but we also become partners that are reliable and can contribute towards the formulation, implementation, and monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals. But when you look at the Sustainable Development and these three critical actions as our roles, We will say the SDGs come with the principle as he highlighted, leave no one behind. How do you ensure that you don't leave us, the young people, behind? Traditionally, if our parents talk on our behalf, it suffices. Sometimes we are not consulted. Sometimes there are policies formulated on our behalf and we don't actually contribute to them. Sometimes there are services even designed to benefit us and we don't sit at the table to discuss on that. We don't inform those policies. So SDG, as Mr. Jane said, building on the unfinished businesses of MDGs, is telling us that is not what we envisage. We should not leave anyone behind. And there then, we will say technology provided us a platform to bridge that gap, that no one is left behind. Today we're talking about the internet governance, and I'm glad that we have most of the audience as young people. Maybe we will say yes together if you agree with me. Do we all need fast, reliable, and affordable internet services? Yes. I'm not hearing you. Yes. I am not hearing you, I mean. Yes. Do we all need secure, safe, and resourceful internet platforms? Yes. So these are things we need. Whether it is me or it's you or it's our brother that is sitting in Kosemar, or is sitting in Kerawan, or is sitting in Sabi, or is sitting in Kianjali, or is sitting in Gunjur. We are talking about a young person who is differently able in Makamasire, also deserve to use that mobile phone to connect and benefit from the opportunities provided online. But is that the case in our current situation? Is that the case in our current situation? If that is not the case, meaning even in our urban centers, we still have communities of people who cannot access internet, then collectively we know we have a problem. And that means we go back to our responsibility as young people, one of our which is accountability, to ensure that those who should ensure is provide it. But moving forward, we need to also be able to innovate as young people and get
What is going on with the mic?
If you look at internet governance, we are saying as young people that in addition to our functions or our roles like I highlighted on the SDGs, it also goes for when we talk about internet governance. So we all have a collective responsibility to raise awareness around internet governance, around cybersecurity, also around cyberbullying, and also around the infrastructure, the availability or the provision of the infrastructure. We need to also hold the duty bearers to account to ensure these services are delivered, because we don't want to leave anyone, any youth behind. And we also need to take action. If you look at the SDG 8, decent job and economic growth, there are a lot of opportunities online. But we cannot tap those opportunities if we are not given the access. If we don't get the literacy, the understanding to be able to benefit from those numerous opportunities. So in short, what we're trying to say here is when you talk of cybersecurity and you talk of sustainable development goals, we are saying internet governance should be a tool to help us realize sustainable development goals. That we can use that as a measure to accelerate local and national actions and even international actions to deliver for the citizenry. And we are concerned as a constituency, issues around decent job, which we feel the sustainable development goals has promised, but we can also get them, we can use the internet or ICT industry to help us achieve that. But equally in the industry, SDG 9, which look at industry, innovation, and the infrastructure are necessary. But we can only rely on what is provided. So it will require greater partnership between government as duty bearer, but also the private sector, to ensure that we are able to improve the industry, to ensure that we are able to innovate, but also provide the infrastructure as required. And finally, I would say that all of us as agents of change, as young people who are role models in our communities, but also in the country, in the Gambia, it is our responsibility to understand that in addition to all these opportunities, the cyberspace as an open platform also have some negative issues that we all need to work on. And meaning we must all rise up, stand up firmly to say no to cyberbullying, no to all other cyber crimes, and stand on our feet to ensure that the government of the Gambia, with the National Development Plan, with the example Dr. Jane already gave with the dashboard in Rwanda, that Gambia is able to digitalize the NDP, its indicators and targets, so that I can sit down in my compound and use my phone to track progress. As to what, if government did not do that, as young people, we need to innovate to ensure that we create such platform to monitor progress on the NDP implementation, which I think is fundamental towards the successful implementation of the NDP. And furthermore, it is equally our responsibility to say if this NDP will deliver service to us, then we also take ownership and drive it, the National Development Plan. So we will demand, or we will engage, and we will work with all stakeholders to harness the potential of this internet to establish e-commerce platforms, but to also ensure that there is e-governance, where we can collectively participate in how our collective wealth is managed and utilized, so that we can create more e-jobs for our generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Darboe. Mr. Darboe mentioned very key points here when it comes to e-commerce, e-governance, and everything. But we can only achieve all these when we have affordable, reliable internet. And Mr. CAMARA is from the government, and he is a key government stakeholder when we talk about affordable, reliable internet. So, Mr. CAMARA, maybe you can tell us the plan of the government when it comes to the National Development Plan, which is in line with the SDGs, which is our main topic here, internet governance and the SDGs. How can we have these things? What are some of the plans? And what can we do to achieve this?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon to you all. I'm pleased to be around here amongst you. Yes, I think Mr. Jane and Mr. Darboe have set the pace. I guess everybody knows the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And how many goals do we have? We have 17 goals. Yet, ICT is a critical enabler to achieve those 17 goals. ICT is an enabler to leapfrog developing countries to achieve those goals. Hence its importance. And I think this topic in this IGF is very apt and timely. There are specific targets that are devised, for leveraging ICTs to drive the SDGs, especially in Goal 4, that's education. Goal 5, gender equality. Goal 9, infrastructure, so universal and affordable access, which is just mentioned, to the internet. And Goal 17, partnerships and means of implementation. Universal and affordable access is very important because if you use ICT to facilitate education, ICT to facilitate health service delivery, people need to have the means to access the service. And if it's not affordable, it will be difficult for the masses to access those services. And this is what our policy drive needs to look at, so that there is inclusive participation of all in the sustainable development goals and the realization of the National Development Plan of the Gambia. I can tell you that the National Development Plan is anchored on the Sustainable Development Goals, and ICT is paramount, being a critical enabler in achieving the National Development Plan. It is important that we all get ourselves familiarized with that. He made mention of security and safety, use of ICT. Where there is access, we use it, but security is very important. If you have a platform doing mobile banking or money transfer, you want that platform to be secure. If I want to get my money or transfers through that platform, if it's not secured and that people can just enter into it and do anything they want to, I mean, there's no need to utilize that platform. And in fact, what happens is that derails confidence in the use of ICTs. So it is very paramount that the security, and this is what very paramount in internet governance, security of the infrastructure, the platform, and the services and applications that you would be using. And this is why I think WhatsApp is very well known for that security, and this is why you can see the trend that everybody is leaving Viber, shifting to WhatsApp, which means security is a concern for people. So it's very key in internet governance, but at the same time, it is key to the achievement of social development goals, especially in the area of Goal 8, Goal 9, and Goal 17. Talking about that, we have innovations through ICT, applications, and infrastructure that has provided unprecedented technology revolution that ushered in the fourth, and others call it now fifth generation, wireless technologies, 4 and 5G, to support sustainable consumption and production patterns. That is Goal 12 of the SDG. You have smart fridges that can tell you if you are getting out of stock in your fridge. You can be at work, access, okay, what do I have at home? My groceries. You are out of onions, you're out of tomatoes. So by the time, before you get home, you could just pass by the shop, buy your things, and replenish your fridge. And that's a critical part of the Goal 12 of the SDGs. This is our lives, how we live our life. It's changing now. Our life is changing. How we live our life is changing. ICT is doing it for us. But we also have an issue of privacy, which is very important in internet governance. Data protection and privacy of your information on the internet. And I think it's a key area we all need to play a part, especially government in the area of policy, legal and regulatory framework. We need that in place in line with the international best practices. We also have the issue of the threats he mentioned, cyberbullying, predatory nature of having these predators online that look at these young kids as prey and try to lure them into things that are not in their best interests. And so I think those threats are very important that the youth that are constantly online to be able to identify them and use the appropriate means, to get to the relevant people that could help them out. The police are there, the other ICT experts that can also help you if you have issues with your security to help you avoid being prey on the internet. The next thing is usage, how we comport ourselves when we use in these platforms. That is us now, self-censorship. Yes, internet governance has principles, but you have the government, the international community, the industry, but you have us, the users. We also have a role to play. How we compare. When you mentioned about the cyberbullying, it's because that person doing it did not inculcate good manners in himself to know that I should not do this. And if we all do that, we'll all enjoy the benefits of the internet. So our attitude is also very important. It's vital in internet governance. When we talk about the principles, it's not only about government, it's also our individual, it's how we abide by the rules. Because we can see that you see young people, or even on Facebook, there is an age limit on Facebook. You can see a 10-year-old having an account. What is the parents doing about that? So these are all, we all play a part when it comes to internet governance, in as much as it has some positive effects on our lives, but we have to be well-mannered to really benefit on this usage. So we know ICT is for everything. Now he mentioned at the beginning about energy. Now that I'm at the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, I think it was timely. I'll meet people, they'll say, oh, you're a communication expert, you should go back to the ministry. I'll tell them it's a blessing in disguise, because all the work I've been doing at the communication infrastructure without energy is meaningless. And I've got the opportunity and privilege to fix the energy problems of the country. Probably when I fix that, I can come back and enjoy. But for now, I think, that is my preoccupation, to make sure we address the energy challenges of this country. And I think there are improvements, and you still have to bear with us, because I can see now when even light goes off for 2 hours, people will complain. When you don't have light for 6 hours or a whole day, even 2 hours, 30 minutes, people will complain. You need to bear with us, but we are still working hard on it. No, it's good to keep us on our toes, so that we are working hard to avoid Occupy Westfield and DEFADOI. But we need time. We need time. Things take time. It just don't come abruptly. We need time. We need planning. It needs money to invest. And I think AB would agree with me that in the NDP, the first priority of the NDP is energy. It's the priority of the government, and we really have focus on it to address that. Well, what are we doing on the energy sector also? Some of you may hear about smart grids. How do we use ICT to efficiently manage energy? So we use ICT to enhance management and preservation of energy through smart grids to distribute extensively. Energy conservation for smart household systems that conserve energy for efficient use. Because at times we do have, the supply is always a challenge, but if we conserve energy, we would all, and use energy in a smart way, we will still all enjoy what we have. But you have people that may leave their houses, leave all the lights on, or leave their ACs on. You're still occupying a space. Probably you need that in your office where you're going to work. You don't need it in your house because you're not there. So you get to your office, you have erratic power supply because the demand is higher than supply. We get to load shedding, which we could have avoided by conserving energy. That's why smart use of energy, that's how ICT can also come into play to manage energy system in your households. So you can see, and affordable and clean energy it's a goal in the SDGs. And we think ICT can play a critical role in that, in as much as energy supports ICT, but ICT also can support energy development in the country. And we have plans in getting smart grids, getting in place a SCADA system that can help in the management of the network and infrastructure, so that where, in that case, you will know where there is no much need, how to transfer, power generation from one end to another and make use of it. So that smart management system, even without adequate supply, can make a big improvement in energy supply in the country. We talk about innovation, industry development, and infrastructure development. That's the goal 9. To build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation cannot be realized without ICTs playing a pivotal role through an enabling environment that includes internet governance principles and net neutrality. Net neutrality is a hot topic, but I think it is very important. It's an important pillar of internet governance that we need to drive as a government and as a country. ICTs can help in the management of forest resources and combat desertification. That is goal 15 of the SDGs. We also have ICTs to develop right tools and applications to help vulnerable communities and the differently able, I'll use his words to be politically correct, the differently able, because I was in a meeting, it took a whole day to agree on how to call them. So I think that is a better word to phrase to call them. And that's the goal 17. So in a nutshell, we can see that ICT can drive this sustainable development goal, but at the same time, internet governance and the principles is very important, that we all have to play a role, and it's very important to achieve our objectives. On that note, in conclusion, I said ICTs and the internet has become a powerful tool that empowers people around the world, especially through social media platforms. E-government and other e-strategies have enabled countries to leapfrog in their development process. For example, access to education, healthcare, innovative services, mobile banking, and e-commerce. These are examples that can make a big difference in an economy. All these interventions depend on the internet, hence the utmost importance of internet governance to support mainstreaming ICTs in our SDG process and interventions. ICTs can be used to not only promote and advance the SDGs, but as a vital and critical enabler to achieve all the 17 SDGs. Therefore, it is imperative to build the requisite ecosystem that is nurtured through strong institutions, innovation, and the enabling environment, which is policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks, premised on good internet governance principles. On that note, I'll stop here, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. CAMARA, for that deliberation. We will now move on quickly to DEMBA, KANDEH. We are moving behind time. Mr. KANDEH, when we talk about the SDGs also and internet governance, one of the issues that's missing is, one of the key issues that always come out is the creation of local content. And we have seen that that's something that is missing in the Gambia here when it comes to local content. What are some of the means we can do to achieve this, because content is also linked to accessibility?
Well, thank you very much, Khadija. Thank you for having me. I mean, there are challenges with speaking last, because basically they would have said everything, but that also makes life easy for me. So to build on to what my colleagues have actually mentioned is to start with the internet governance is a fundamental principles of internet governance sort of interwoven into the processes of the Sustainable Development Goals, so to speak, Agenda 2030. As far as the internet is concerned, we all know how pervasive, quote unquote, it has become in our lives. And as such, since the turn of the century, we've seen how increasingly people, particularly young people, Lamin alluded to that earlier on, are taking ownership of ICTs, are taking ownership of the internet to sort of, go about their daily routine. Today, over 3 billion people are online, but there's a significant number of the world population that are also still offline. What is fundamentally important, and I want to make this quite clear, is that in terms of dealing with the SDGs and internet governance, whether you are online or offline, you are an important stakeholder. That's a fundamental principle. In terms of coming back to your question on local content, it's important, I mean, overwhelmingly, in the Gambia and elsewhere, and local content is an important component of the local population or a specific country realizing the potentials of the internet within their territory. Now, there are different approaches in terms of what constitutes local content, and people sometimes tend to find it difficult to agree on what is or what constitutes local content. Is it content produced locally? Or is it content produced by citizens within a territory? Or is it content produced by, say, Gambians abroad? Does that count as local content in Gambia? But irrespective of what you consider local content, what your definition of local content is, there's a general agreement in terms of the importance of local content. And as such, local content, therefore, has been seen as content that sort of appeals to local people in a way that other content does not necessarily appeal to them. And in that, therefore, the mode of production or the place of production doesn't really count much. And I mean, to connect this to the Sustainable Development Goals, I think it's super important to mention here that there is absolute need for us to create more content, more awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals in terms of what it means to the Gambian people, in terms of what it means to our realities. We say that over 60% of our population are young people. That naturally means a majority of our people who are online or who access content are young people. What does that mean? What are the opportunities that exist in the country for young people in terms of ICTs? All of the SDGs from 1 to 17, they are all, like all the previous speakers mentioned, they are all, you cannot attain any of them, in isolation with ICT, in isolation with the internet. So it's fundamentally important, therefore, that we look at all of these issues. And I'm trying to think of local content issues in terms of trying to connect that to local regulations in the Gambia or the local context, and what research have shown in terms of, creating an enabling environment for the production of local content in the Gambia. Global research on ICT use and internet has shown that the robust use of ICT sort of equal progress in terms of achieving or attaining the SDGs, whether it's in the Gambia or elsewhere in sub-Saharan Africa or outside the continent. That's a reality. And also that young people are massively online. What is also important, and this probably could be seen as either negative or positive, is that the divide that exists, whether it's in terms of gender or rural or urban, that existed before the digital era is sort of transformed naturally. And I think this is where policymakers, I'm glad the permanent secretary is here, and some of the other stakeholders in the building, we need to be aware of some of these issues. The pre-digital divide that existed, we are sort of either consciously or unconsciously taking them along to the digital era. And some of the fundamental principles laid out in the SDGs actually, preach against some of these things, that we as a people, we as policymakers, as stakeholders, we should be aware of some of these issues. Somebody mentioned about bullying. What bullying means to a young man online is totally different to what bullying means to a young woman, for instance. And those are fundamental issues that we need to take into account. Beyond that, I want to look at more specific issues in terms of local content in the Gambia. In most cases, in terms of ICT policy development in the Gambia. In the past, particularly, we've seen a top-down approach. But we have a new Gambia, we have a new dispensation, and I see our theme here is internet governance in the new Gambia. I do hope that moving on, we would have a bottom-up approach, a multi-stakeholder approach, fundamentally the principles of internet governance happening in terms of ICT policy, and all the development issues in the Gambia. It's important, whether it was the ICA Act 2013 or other regulations in the Gambia. Most of it has always been, handed down to us as ordinary users. And in fact, in most cases, a lot of people are not even aware of these policy issues or these regulations and laws. So it's important. Another important issue, I think, in terms of local content, which falls directly under the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, is in terms of what are the regulations for content production. In some countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, there are what we call communication commissions. Unfortunately, in the Gambia, we don't have it. But all of this falls directly under the purview of PURA, and as such, there is a need, for us to focus on how much we need to do, what the regulations would be around local content, what percentage of our contents would be local content. That's fundamental. I mean, and especially when we talk about, IGF in the Gambia or internet governance in the Gambia or sustainable development goals in the context of the Gambia, there is a need for us to have those issues sorted out. So this is a challenge for PURA. This is a challenge for all of us here. Let's think of these issues as we move on in the new era of internet governance in the new Gambia. I think LAMIN mentioned, the Permanent Secretary mentioned net neutrality. We're still struggling with issues of internet connectivity in the Gambia. I'm not going to mention names, but our research, and I'm sure it's almost common knowledge in this country that there are network providers or ISPs that deliberately their internet is slow. I mean, they're still operating on, I think, 1G or 2G, you can tell me, but it's so slow. Whereas others are claiming to be at 4G or 5G or whatever. So there is huge disparity in terms of connectivity. For an ordinary user like you and I, all we want is just buy internet and be able to use it, and that's our fundamental issues. A lot of people, most of the time, people will tell you that, net neutrality is not an issue in sub-Saharan Africa. Net neutrality is not an issue for people in the Gambia, but it's an important issue, something that ought to be looked at, and I'm sure PURA also has a stake in this as well. Last but not the least, I want to talk about affordability and access. These are issues that directly connect to local content as well. If we cannot access the internet, we cannot produce local content for the internet. You and I might be the best photographers, we might be the best digital experts, we might be the best poets, we might be the best students in our local schools or primary schools, but if we don't have access to the internet, we cannot upload whatever we produce that we can share with the rest of the world. So access is a fundamental principle, and that is connected to energy issues. We might have strong internet, fast-speed internet, but if we don't have energy, if we don't have proper, regular electricity supply, then what are we doing with access? We are not doing much. And access today, actually, the definition for access, or when we talk about access, we are going beyond just accessing the internet or providing the internet. We're talking about providing people also with the basic skills required to use the internet. So when we talk about access in the case of the Gambia, therefore, we're not just talking about providing, broadband internet services or fixed lines or, whatever the kind of internet connection that we are providing across the country, but we also want to make sure that, especially young people, again, it comes back to what LAMIN was saying earlier, that they are trained on how to use and, harness the potentials of ICT. It's fundamental. I mean, the importance of this cannot be overemphasized. And finally, is affordability. And one thing I want to point out in terms of affordability issues is that a lot of people in town and our surveys, public opinion surveys and research on affordability on ICT, especially internet in the Gambia, shows that people cannot afford internet. A lot of the time, people will tell you, okay, compared to other regions or other countries, our internet is still very, very cheap. But you need to compare the earning capacities of peoples as well. So you need to sort of take a holistic approach in terms of affordability issues. And all of these are fundamental pillars that connect directly to the issue of local content production and distribution in our internet ecosystem. I think I will pause here for a while and then to allow more engagement.
Thank you very much, everyone on the panel here. I think that was very interesting discussions we have from our panelists. If you have any questions, you can start lining up to the mic over there. But before people come up, I just have a quick question for Mr. Jane and Mr. Camara. Mr. Jane, one of the biggest criticisms against the SDGs is that it lacked when it comes to issues of democracy and human rights. It's not very much reflected in the development goals. And we are talking about internet governance, especially when it comes to free expression online. So how can we make sure that when we are talking about the SDGs also, the issues of democracy and human rights are not left behind?
Oh, I think it's the contrary. It's the contrary. It's heavily emphasized within the SDGs, within the Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 16 talks about justice, having access to justice for all, peace and security, and protecting fundamental human rights. And on a related note on that, in the Gambia, I think there's a need we've been talking about protecting citizens from the negative aspects of the internet in terms of internet governance. But also, I think it's important to protect the positive aspects of the internet. We can remember with the previous regime that certain online media websites were blocked for some time until the regime changed. There was a time that the internet was shut down completely during the elections. There were times that social media, to kind of block off dissent, social media sites were blocked. I had to use VPN to get on WhatsApp. I know everybody remembers that as well. So there's also that there needs to be assurance that the internet will be open access and free for all, and that these fundamental rights to information, these are human rights and rights for the Gambian citizens that are in the laws and the constitution of the Gambia. So we have to ensure that these rights are protected as well. I also think that the Information Act is outdated in some way. There needs to be a more inclusive approach to make sure that the act is updated and that some of the draconian laws that are there are removed and abolished as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kamara, I will come back to you because a lot of people are already lining up. So, Ponce, we can go with you. Ponce, we can hear you. Okay, I brought something.
Hello, is it okay now? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, yes, my question is, thanks to all the presenters. My question is to Abe. I know prior to the Internet Governance, the National Internet Governance Forum being stopped in the Gambia, the first two editions, UNDP supported this forum through your governance program. So since Gambia will be hosting the West African Internet Governance Forum next year with all our brothers from West Africa, and also we'll have the School of Internet Governance, I would like to know whether the UNDP will be more involved in the next year program. Thank you.
Well, I know we have a governance program consolidating democratic governance in the Gambia. So I think it's something that we can discuss and see if it's something that we can support and incorporate under our consolidating governance program. So maybe we can have a bilateral discussion about that point. Thanks.
Okay, and I'd like to thank all the panelists. I think you all did great. My question has to do with affordability and youth participant in policy making. It has been rightly mentioned here that to achieve the SDGs, we need internet, and more specifically, to achieve the SDGs, we need ICT, more specifically the internet. And LAMIN did mention that the youths are the youths are the greatest. They form a larger number of those using the internet. So youths are being a greater stakeholder in the internet. So this means that the youths will participate in issues that relate to the internet. And now my question is, I know a lot of policies are being raised, are being enacted when it comes to tariff on internet, and we're talking about affordability here. Affordability is still a problem. So my question is to LAMIN. Are youths involved when it comes to policy making in terms of setting tariffs for the internet? Are youths involved in when policy are to be enacted in terms of tariff? And if no, what are you doing at your level to make sure there's youth participant? Because indeed, you youth are the greatest users of the internet. We form the largest stakeholder. So I think we definitely need to be there to have a sit-in when decisions are being made in terms of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like you already mentioned, and the previous speakers has already alluded to the fact that young people are the main largest share of consumers of internet services, or let me say products. And it's only smart that when we are making decisions or formulating policies around the usage, even we call the consumption of those products and services, that we are able, we talk to the consumers. I would say on the tariff, I was not involved, I've never been involved in any consultation on the setting of the tariffs. But I know also there is a consumer, protection platform. I can't speak whether directly they have been engaged on it, but as a council, and we are not involved, and we are not still involved in anything that has to do with issue of setting tariffs on the various internet services or products. And I think PS is around. I think that is vital that we are able to look at how do we ensure that moving into the new Gambia, to ensure that we are able to continue the direct engagement with consumers so that they can not only take ownership, but they will be fairly treated on the services that have been delivered. Thank you.
Yes, maybe I can take this question as being a former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Information and Communication. I can see there are a lot of misnomer when it comes to the policy development. But maybe I'll start with the tariff issue. There is no tariff policy or regulations we've developed without the consumer protection agency not playing a part, and the Gambia Competition Commission. I used to make it as a responsibility that even when the list comes, they're very prominent, that they participate, because without them, our consultative process is incomplete. We cannot get each and everybody to be there, but we take them to represent the consumers, and which is cross-cutting. When it comes to tariff, I think recently the issue of the tariffs, if you look at the ministry's, how do you call it, mission statement and vision, affordability is very key. But affordability is also relative, because we can also get a price whereas the service providers cannot recoup their investment, and then they could not reinvest, The next thing is you don't have a platform to use an internet. So you need to create a balance. And normally what we do is when you do a tariffing, you need to look at their cost, their investment outlays, and agree on a margin on top of that. So it's quite reflective of their cost. But recently, the ministry, I think Amadou may be here, I do know that they did a cost model, but because that process was on by the time I left there, but I do know that they did a cost model study so that looks into all the parameters and variables, and once agreed upon, it becomes the mechanism that will be used to develop tariffs for the various services. On the issue of the youth and affordability, I think probably we need to look at the pricing of services. As he mentioned, some of the issues of net neutrality, whether, how they consume bandwidth when you pay for a service. Maybe these are the things that need to be looked into. Whether there is no throttling happening with your bandwidth once you pay for it, because there are times people that query, I've paid for 4 meg, but definitely this system I have, the way it's slow, I'm not having 4 meg. So these are the things probably the regulator has to look into. But it's for you guys as youth, as consumers. I think Pura has a hotline, 148, which is free of charge. If you have issues like this, you call them and put your complaints forward so that they will know that these are issues and they can take charge of the issues.
Just a bit of an addition to that. I'm aware of Pura's Consumer Parliament, which is a very good initiative, and they talk about a lot of issues, including tariffs. So it's an opportunity for all people, including young people, to take part in that. It's a good initiative. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next question. You want
Hello.
to say something? Yes,
First of all, I would like to say a big thank you to the panelists. And thank you very much for the wonderful deliberations on the SDGs. And I'm really happy that our National Development Plan is really in line with the SDGs. The one that I want to highlight is SDG number 5, which talks about gender equality. And I'm happy that we have GAMCHICs now, Gambian women in technology. Mr. CAMARA talks about some really bad things that happen on the internet, like cyberbullying, stalking, hate crimes. And some of these things really follow us into the real world, so that now we have situations where cyberbullies turn into real-life physical bullies. And I think women are really, they are the biggest victims. They are usually the ones that are at the end of these attacks. I wish the Minister of Justice people are here, because I want to suggest to them to pass very staunch laws, strong ones. And where there are laws, I want to also call on the law enforcers to tighten their belts more. They are doing really great, but implementation is a problem in the Gambia. We have laws about gender issues. I'm not aware of any laws that deals with gender issues with the internet. But if you don't have it, I challenge the Minister of Justice and the people at the Parliament to enact such laws, because we need them. Mr. Dawo also spoke about the SDGs and about not leaving anyone behind, right? You also talk about not leaving the youth behind. Specifically, I think we should also talk about not leaving the women behind, because they are, in most cases, they are left behind. And we need them, because they are also very important stakeholders in the development of this country. It's not actually a question. But I want to thank you again, because all your presentations were really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very nice comment. I think especially when it comes to issues of cyberbullying and cybercrimes. Mr. Jani mentioned earlier, when it comes to our Communication and Information Act, our laws are really behind. I think that's one of the areas we need to catch up when it comes to online. But I remember, I know that the ministry is working on reforming all the laws that has to do with freedom of expression, freedom of speech, especially when it comes to online content. I hope that's one of the areas they will capture. I really hope so. So we can have Kausu, don't you? Yeah. It's not.
Okay. All right, at times, I think it is important we refer to the documents we may have. Probably you know whether they address your issues or not. And I think, because if you look at it as a conflicting thing, he's talking about how we have strong laws to address some of these issues. He's talking about draconian laws. So that's two contradictory statements on the kind of acts we have in place. One thing I do know about the act is it was forward-looking, and it's based on ECOWAS statutes. There are supplementary acts that are done by ECOWAS, which are internationally driven, international best practices. The Information and Communication of 2009 was based on that. So there is this notion, most people think, oh, this, yes, there was an amendment by the former president. So that amendment stained the whole act. That's just one section, not even a section. Yeah,
Mr. Kamara, we hate that law.
Just that one. And no, it could be repealed. It's very easy.
I think that's why
the law will be where it was. You know, I support that. It could be repealed. But the thing is, we wanted to address some of these issues, but we have challenges because what government wants now is they want to address things holistically. But if you go to the office, records are there where we've written to the Minister of Justice telling them that we want to get these laws out, amend them as soon as possible, as quick wins for the government.
Yep.
But we engulfed into that we want a holistic approach, so we could not do anything about it. But that law, we never participated in even making that amendment. It just came, and the minister was asked to do. The minister was not even aware. He just presented it, but everything came from between the office of the president and the Minister of Justice. He was just given something written to go and read at the National Assembly. So at times you would appreciate some of the things we go through. But apart from that IC Act was was forward-looking, and I do know probably what we need to do. We can still go and look at it. If at all we can strengthen it, we can improve on it, we can do that. But it was just that amendment that tainted it. You talk about cybercrime, child protection. There's a specific section on that in the Act. So it's important, before we keep criticizing, we ourselves read the law and make our own opinion on it. But most people are carried by the views of others without actually going and revisiting the Act. But there's a special section on child protection in that Act.
I think you will also agree, your ministry also failed in popularizing that law. When we talk about the Information and Communication Act, I think the only thing that comes to our mind is the forced publication online. And that's one area we hear.
Part of the Communication Act.
Okay, that was the Newspaper Amendment Act. But it's forced news online, if I remember correctly. And broadcasting online.
It's not part of the Communication Act.
Yes, but forced news online is part of it. But false news is, I think we should make it
the sedition law, the false publication, those are part of the laws of the Gambia.
That's part of Newspaper Amendment.
Yeah, but they're not part of the Information and Communication Act.
Yeah.
It's not there.
But we only know about the false news online.
Yeah.
And we hate that part.
Yeah. So it's not under the purview of the Ministry of Information.
Yeah,
That's under the purview of the Ministry of Justice.
Yeah, we say, but I think one of the areas also when it comes to the ministry where they fail is when we make laws also, we don't tell people what are the laws that have been made. And I think you will excuse most people's ignorance here. A lot of people don't even know that we have laws that protect children online. Cyberbullying, cybercrimes. People really don't know about it.
No,
and I think
when we did the law,
when
we did the law, that was in 2009. It was widely publicized. It was a consultative process. I'll tell you, even in communication, the vice chair of the communication committee of Nigeria was there. We have Nigerians. Everybody participated in that process. The problem we have is that people don't go visit and go to the source of things. You go to the website, unless, I don't know whether the website Armored is still operation, is there, but you go to the website, the act is there. What I'm saying is, for all of us, before we criticize something, we go and visit the document and make our individual judgment about them. Because what I can see here
But how many people can go to the ministry's website? We are even talking about access to internet.
Yeah.
We are talking about access. We don't even have the access.
I have a quick interjection there. I was saying that
I can buy, but how many people can afford it?
I also think that, the government should also be held accountable to the citizens.
Seriously.
And should also communicate. It's very important for government to communicate. Use social media and highlight some of the positive aspects of the things you've done. It's good for the citizens to know. My Fati used to do that. DEMBA Jawa used to do that. So I think that we should encourage of information, exactly. So I think that in encouraging the use of social media and communicating to the public by government officials is also something that should be looked at, very important.
The challenge is the local content and updating our sites and it's a big challenge. Even the websites, you look at them, they're outdated information. You go to the Facebook pages, you go to the internet, I mean, the attitude also is there for people to make sure these things information is uploaded on them. It's a challenge. I agree with you that it has ever been a challenge. We tried all modes, to make sure that happens, outreach, but it's still a challenge. And I think that is our biggest challenge. Information is there, the local content is there. It's how do we utilize it and make sure it's up there online for people to know, and it's a big challenge. That I agree.
I will accept that. Thank you. Shida.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shilel Koli from the Gambia Press Union School of Journalism. My questions go to LAMIN DARBOE, Executive Secretary, National Youth Council. Earlier on your presentation, you mentioned that we all deserve access to internet and opportunities available online. Okay, my question is, what are the policy issues that needs to be addressed for uninterrupted access to the internet for the youths? Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm sure all my colleagues, panelists will have their share in this question. The policy actions that we need to take to ensure that there is uninterrupted access. For sure, I know there are policy, but beyond policy, there are also operational issues that equally need to be taken care of to ensure that there is uninterrupted access. First, I will say, when we talk about access to internet, I think there should be the infrastructure. We need to have the infrastructure, that is the ICT infrastructure, so that those young people in Combo and those in the rural can all enjoy access to internet. But beyond that also, that able young people can access, but differently able can also access internet. So we'll need to look at the infrastructure. We also need to look at ensuring that, and in addition to the infrastructure, I think we already highlighted the issue of energy, which may not necessarily fall within the purview of maybe Ministry of Information, but is critical to ensure that there is access. Because even if the ICT infrastructure is all over the country and people don't still have energy, it will be difficult, it will hamper access. But beyond that also, I think costs. The first question that came to me was around cost. If the internet services are provided and people cannot afford it, then access is hampered again. And that's one reason I really wanted to initially respond later on the question of whether young people are participating when the tariffs are being set and all that stuff. Of course, there are other agencies that are participating, but not necessarily those agencies are young people agencies. They are cross-cutting. They have the old, they have the young, they serve all the interests. But it's essential that policymakers understand that when we, the consumers, are poor and we are using our little resources or mega resource we have, we are using all that to access internet. In fact, instead of internet making us richer and better, it's going to make us poorer and poorer. You want to access, let's say, download a document online, you have to buy gigabytes. Before you even download, it's off. Your bytes are off. Let's say you are a student. you need to go and buy another one to be able to access that. By the time you realize that you spend too much than necessary to be able to do access the service to your satisfaction as expected. So one of the barriers to uninterrupted access, and which for me again is a policy issue we need to address, is the issue of the cost. And I'm sure there are other barriers and other policy dimensions we could address, but I'll give space to my colleagues who want to look at the policy dimensions, other policy dimensions.
Okay, I think we will just take the 3 questions quickly, then you can, the panelists can answer everything at one go. Okay, so if a question is addressed to you, you can just take note of it. Sir?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to congratulate the panelists for the brilliant deliberations they have been given. And I would like to direct my question to Mr. KANDEH, who has been talking about the content providers. I am trying to find out how much do you know about the content providers, the protections that they have, or how much protection do they have, especially those who are not even registering their works. Because we've been talking since in the morning about internet, the economic divide, the internet economic gains and all that. But how much intellectual, all those content providers, they create intellectual properties. And as an officer at the Copyright Office, I don't think we have even registered a single software developer in the Gambia for the last 15 years. It means no application has ever made in the Gambia, has ever been made in the Gambia, and no software has ever been built in the Gambia. Or if they have been built, there is no registration that has been ever done for any content provider in the country for the internet. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. My question goes to PS CAMARA. Good to see your face after being a while. In your presentation, you mentioned that the government needs time to resolve this constant electricity or energy failure. So I just want to know, for how long can we wait? Because the more we wait, the more we become less productive, and also the more the government and the businesses lose money. So for how long can we wait? Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Okay, my question is, since development has to be within and it has to be inclusive, not including everyone, not leaving anybody behind, so are there mechanisms in place in making sure that women in rural areas are effectively taught how to access the internet, as they are also key players, especially in the area of agriculture? My other question is, how do we transform as a country to meet these pressing issues and needs, as most of the countries are non-literates?
Good afternoon. I'm Mohammed from the Gambia Cybersecurity Alliance. How to call it? There is a saying that goes that you can preach to the choir. And as having it as it is, and I believe Gambia, we are on the right track.
We can hear you.
Can you get me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, honorable guest speakers. I'm Mohammed from the Gambia Cybersecurity Alliance. And it's such an honor to have you guys around. Okay. There is an old saying says that you can preach to the choir, and I believe Gambia, we are on the right track. And if we can reflect back, look into our neighbors and our surrounding, back after the Korean War, there are 2 things that South Korea did. One, they invested in youth, and the other, they invested in ICT, which is technology. And you can see, as one of the speakers mentioned, in Rwanda, in Kigali, they're doing an amazing job. And I believe Gambia, we are on the right track too. Okay, this question is directed to PS CAMARA. He was talking about the, how to call it? Is it the GDS? The SDGs on ICT and education. Okay, here is my question. Like, you can see in schools we have computers and we have ICT facilities there, but it's not a core subject. I believe educating kids at an early age, becoming literate about ICT will really help in developing the nation.
Did you get a question?
That's the question.
Okay.
On ICTs.
Okay.
Yeah, what is the government doing about that as a concern?
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Jaju, an activist. My concern is you made mention of the SDGs. For the goals to be achieved, everyone needs to do their parts. Governments, international organizations, the private sectors, civil society, academic and technical community members. What is the plan in place to engage the stakeholders for SDGs, for the implementation, for the sustainability? Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. We quickly, DEMBA, we can go through from here. You then, PS CAMARA.
All right. Just to add, I would say that the initial response I gave, I think the other question also came around the issue of barriers or how do we ensure uninterrupted access. I will say I've already mentioned some, or two already, but like already highlighted, we have the infrastructure, we have the cost, but also the awareness. You know, people need to know how to not only access internet, but what opportunities exist there and how they can, because accessing internet itself should go beyond just opening an account, an email or so. It's a whole community, a community that have different services, different products, and that is expected to better our lives, that it adds values that increase connectivity and communication, but also to use for startup, for example, e-commerce and other platforms. So we need to raise awareness. But beyond raising awareness, we need to ensure that people are literate, ICT literate, that they understand these platforms, but they also understand the implications of using and misusage of these different platforms. I think that equally goes to the issues of among the barriers and the policy issues to address. But again, you go to, for example, in the rural Gambia, like she already highlighted, you have a lot of young people there who would love to communicate. Let's say at the National Council, when you send emails to our networks across the country, we sometimes will say, follow it with a call to other regions, because we know they didn't have access to internet. Even if they have emails, they have to go to certain locations to be able to access internet. So there is responsibility on the side of government, being the primary duty bearer, to respond, to address some of these concerns, because we can say there are 50% chances that if we address the ICT needs of this country, there are 50% chances that we are going to achieve the NDP. ICT, harnessing the potential of technology, can reduce a lot of burden, but also can enhance, can enable a lot of actions that we already agree on as actions we will deliver through the National Development Plan. So I think it's a sector that needs to be given the due attention and priority, that young people understand. We always cite Rwanda. Rwanda used to have a youth and ICT ministry, targeting young people, but ensuring that they are connected to ICT, bringing about innovations, technological innovations to bring about the needed development. And they had done it. Last time we had a team from Africa Youth Commission when we have a meeting in Rwanda. A single person from our team missed her luggage. When she reached the ground, she just raised it and she put it on Twitter. Less than 5 minutes, the Rwandan immigration picked it up. Not even the airline. And they took it up with the airline to ensure that this person, in 1 day, less than 24 hours, the airline responded that they are searching, but in 24 hours they came and gave $100 to say you need to keep this to get some material for yourself until we have we locate your luggage, you know. And they were able to locate the luggage later. So you think about countries, small countries like the Gambia, we can definitely harness the potential of technology to not only communicate, but accelerate all other development aspirations that we tax ourselves within the NDP. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll just talk a little bit about policy options in line with the National Development Plan. LAMIN had referred to this before with the infrastructure. but also to empower local communities to participate in the building of the infrastructure as well, and also to help maintain it. Focusing on applications and local content. If you want to increase usage, have more local language content. It'll drive up usage here in the Gambia. If you have websites in Mandinka, in Wolof, in Jola, it'll help. Also promoting partnerships to drive ICT capacity and skills and entrepreneurship and job creation. Having training courses for the youth, extending ICT education into TVET skills training, changing the mindset and raising awareness on the potential of ICT. And also to stimulate new businesses using ICT and promoting ICT-enabled businesses. A lot of e-commerce, usage of applications or using WhatsApp for business. There's many innovative ways that can be done, and if we can have policies to strengthen these new emerging businesses, it'll go a long way towards reaching our national development aspirations. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kamara.
Okay, thank you. First of all, maybe I'll start with the policy regarding the cost issue. I think it has been a concern. Probably, I'll tell everybody, I'm also a consumer. When I talk to you, don't only look at me as a policymaker, I'm a customer too. And I will be very happy if the internet is cheap for me to make use of. But then, probably the only difference is we, being in the midst of the industry, we know what it means to provide the service. And we know probably what is affordable, what the pricing can be, unlike another user who just wants to use the internet. And also, who are the users? You look at Gambia, we have a very low income. Is internet expensive or we have a low income? I think we need to look at that. Yeah, is it expensive or we have a low income? Probably it's not expensive if I'm earning a decent income, goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Probably we will, yeah? It's expensive because we are using our earning capacity. That's it. The reason I'm pointing out that when we are investing, when the operators are investing in infrastructure, even government, when we go to buy from Huawei or from Alcatel, they don't say, oh, Gambia, you are a poor country, so we won't charge you, much. You pay less and you get your infrastructure. No. The ACE infrastructure costs $25 million. The ECHO one costs about $27 million. Right now, we have an investment of $25 million for the access, that is for rural access and access to our houses, so that we can have fiber connectivity in our houses. In that, we'll have faster internet, yes, to address that challenge. But then, all these have to be paid back. How do we pay? So this is why I said, maybe we just have to forget, not only be looking at the cost element, I think we also have to focus on the income. But it's also important for the sustainability of the industry. And I think, in general, our salary levels, our income levels are very poor in this country. So probably we need to also look at that dimension. Like I said earlier, that there's already an independent consultant works on the cost model, and that looks at the cost of your infrastructure, what margin you can get. So probably still not going to address our concern. So probably it's still not, I haven't seen that report. I'm just assuming. I haven't seen that report. In the event it doesn't address our concern of getting internet cheaper, I think also we need to maybe see how goal 8 is achieved. We could come back to you, but let me just complete. I'm not kidding. I'm just triggering, so that we can look at the other side too. We may not just focus on one side, because I'm just giving an indication of when the operators invest, I'm not holding forth for them. When they invest, they pay at market value internationally. Yeah, so
25 million on ACE, 27 million on ECOWAS. So our frustration is on how much more do we need to spend again for a small country like the Gambia to have access. Because the promise that came with ACE is when such is in place, we are going to have access. So we made both these two investments, but still access is a challenge. I think that is where the frustration is coming from. Again, I'll agree with you, 150% or even 200% that we need to definitely increase the income or earning capacities.
Even coming up to the income, but if you look at the cost of data in Africa, when it comes to ranking, the most expensive, I think Gambia is among the bottom 5 when it comes to the most expensive. Yes. I can share the report. I can share the report, sir. You have to agree. We have one of the most expensive.
I have a quick question, PS. Are there plans to liberalize the gateway, the voice gateway? Because I think that is an issue, and that's what's holding back the internet connectivity for the ACE. Thank you.
Probably Amadou can answer that. I don't work for the ministry anymore, so okay. I won't want to comment on that.
Okay, I've been alerted that we are going behind time. Maybe you can answer the other questions.
What I wanted to say is, I think at times we need to have understanding. Is when you talk about ACE, that's about international. There's 3 layers. You have international dimension, you have the national transmission dimension, and then you have the access dimension, which is called the last mile. That is what comes to you, the end user. And that's the project that is on now. We could not invest in all at one time. But for the internet, before we were constrained because you go through Senegal, and Gamtel was the only company that was providing the bandwidth. You imagine before ACE came, we did not even have, we were about 600 megabytes. 600. Now you talk about 32 STM1s. That's 2012 to date. And in fact, when 2012 came, we went up to about 10 STM1. It increased about 17-fold. That tells you there was suppressed demand because there was constraint at the level. That's the improvement ACE did. And it was for the operators because they buy this bandwidth from Gambia.
Okay,
but
Mr.
when you get to
Kamara,
the national level, that's the ECHO one.
Mr. Kamara.
And so,
I think just answer the last question, then we move on to DEMBA quickly. Yeah. We are way behind time.
So the energy needs, he said, that one also is the same thing, like I explained. You have an ecosystem, like you do generation, you do transmission, and distribution. So these are different layers. Right now, we've addressed generation issue. We have enough capacity. Government has done that. But we still have a challenge with the transmission because it's an old and archaic infrastructure. Even that when you want to power most of the capacity you have, it affects the transmission. And that's why you have intermittent on and offs, the load. So we are working on getting the necessary resources to rehabilitate. I think you may be aware that World Bank has already provided $41 million for that, and EU is also coming. So the project, will be starting this year so that we can revamp our transmission network. And also we have another project that is coming up called the regional access so that we can improve access, that's the distribution to the consumers. So this is why I said we need time. The generation we've addressed, yes, but we still have challenge with the transmission, which we have to address, and also expand on the distribution. Women and ICTs, someone mentioned about that. It has ever been a bedrock of the policy interventions of the ministry. Probably the ministry needs to do some sensitization on that, but the National Information and Communication Infrastructure Policy has been very central in including gender in that. And that ended in 2014. I think a new National Information Communication Policy was developed, which gender is integral. And youth development also is. Someone mentioned about curriculum. Yes, the process was ongoing. So I said, I'm not at the ministry again, but I do know the process was there. But the challenge is the Ministry of Education that decides what curriculum they put in the education system. But I do know that they acknowledge at least basic training to be given to students so they will be able to use ICT, because they want to also integrate ICT in education in the Ministry of Justice. And what we did then at the ministry, we created centers, which we call Connect a School, Connect a Community, that we create ICT centers in a school, which is accessible also by communities in the rural areas. That happened. I think the closest one is at Bakau, or if you live Bakau Community Center, or at Bundung Charles Jau, there is one there. But these were platforms that are used to ensure that there is connectivity to and access of internet to the general public. So affordability, not everybody will be able to access it, but we have these ICT centers where you can go and make use of internet at an affordable price. The NDP process also has ICT as an integral part. And NDP, with the NDP process, government wants to go up to the grassroots level, into the rural areas, engage the population there, educate them, create awareness on the NDP, because we all have a stake in that. And we do know the women, how they contribute when it comes to agriculture and horticultural development, which is a critical part of the NDP we have. So access now, you talk to the operators now, there is more access in the rural areas than urban. You go to the Sarahule areas, they all access it because everybody, they are all people in the diaspora, and they want to communicate. So there are a lot of those who have access there, their networks. They can tell you the unprecedented growth they are having in the rural areas now, with access to internet. So I think, like you said, probably government need to communicate better, but I think we also have to research better so that we come to.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I think mine is on content providers and protection for them. There is a Copyright Act 2004. I'm a bit hazy on the year, but there is a Copyright Act in the Gambia. This Copyright Act has actually been operationalized in the Copyright Regulation 2018, very recently, by the Ministry of Tourism and Culture. As far as registration for software developers in the Gambia is concerned, I don't have any data on that. But I do know that the National Library and Information, I'm not sure about the name, but they handle some of these regulation issues, and it's actually a very easy process to get those regulations sorted out. But what is even more interesting as far as content production is concerned is that there is a need for us to encourage more content production. We need to create, for instance, the movie industry in the Gambia. If I wanted to watch a movie about the Gambia or a locally produced movie, where do I go to watch that movie? I can't. Most of us here are subscribed to Netflix, Amazon, or whatnot, and you cannot find any content, Gambian content on Netflix or any other stuff. And there is need to create those kind of platforms to create opportunities for local content providers. And I think that's very, very key. As far as the policy on access, uninterrupted access, I just want to bring this up. There is a conversation around making broadband internet access a human right. That is one sure way of providing uninterrupted access. But even at that level, there are a lot of arguments, whether in the academia or outside academia, as to whether that will create, the much needed uninterrupted access to the internet. So, but what is interesting about this session, and I think Khadija is going to mention more on that, is that there's been a lot of conversation, and it seems like a lot of people are interested in some of the issues that we are talking about here. And so we can continue this conversation online, into the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Those are very interesting deliberations. We cannot answer every question here right now, but tomorrow we will have the breakout session, so some of the questions can go there. But quickly, when it comes to the issue of the copyright, you know, the Copyright Act, we have the copyright, that is NCAC, then we have the intellectual property, that is Ministry of Justice. So I think they are the ones handling the intellectual property, but tomorrow we will have the Ministry of Justice here. Maybe they can answer your question better. And thank you, everyone here. We have a lot of interesting topics, what about in accessibility, affordability, the internet infrastructure, the right issues, and also the issues. And thank you all very much for that. I will now call on Biran to wrap up for the day. It's getting very, very late, and some of our panelists want to leave. Thank you all very much. That was very good.
Hello.